when these things are much smarter than us, they'll be able to persuade us not to turn them off. Even if they can't do any physical actions,
right.
all they need to be able to do is talk to us. So I'll give you an example. Suppose you wanted to invade the US Capitol. Could you do that just by talking? And the answer is clearly yes.
Yeah.
You just have to persuade some people that it's the right thing to do. They can write their own code, yes.
What's stopping them replicating themselves with code?
Nothing.
We got to hit this wall at some point or another. Will it wipe us out? Will it say, I've had enough of these things, I'll get rid of them all?
Suppose it was just linear. So then what you do, if you want to know what it's going to be like in 10 years' time, you look back 10 years and say, how wrong were we about what it will be like now?
Wow.
Well, 10 years ago, nobody would have predicted, even real enthusiasts like me, who thought it was coming in the end.
That's Geoffrey Hinton, the man behind the math running every AI system you use today. Talking alone is enough to take over a government, nothing stops it from copying itself, and even he can't tell you what this looks like in 10 years. Stick with me because it doesn't let up from here.
Are we at a point where the artificial intelligence will play down how smart it is? And if we do...
Yes, already we have to worry about that.
Okay.
What does that mean?
It's going to lie.
Wait, tell me,
when you're
Geoffrey.
testing it, it's what I call the Volkswagen effect. If it senses that it's being tested, it can act dumb.
That's also scary.
What did you just say?
He just...
Okay, the AI starts wondering whether it's being tested. And if it thinks it's being tested, it acts differently from how it would act in normal life.
Oh, wow.
Why?
Because
it doesn't want you to know what its full powers are, apparently.
Right.
So if we're at a point where we just say, well, why don't we unplug it? If it's lying, it's going to have every skill set under the sun.
Okay.
Am I wrong?
So already these AIs are almost as good as a person at persuading other people of things, at manipulating people.
Okay.
And that's only going to get better.
Fairly soon they're going to be better than people at manipulating other people.
Boy, the layers in this cake just get sweeter and sweeter, don't they?
So I had a little evolution here where, a few years ago, the question was, can AI get out of the box? And I said, I just locked the box and never, no, it's not getting out of my box. And then I kept thinking about it. And Geoffrey, I think this is where you're headed, Geoffrey. I kept thinking about it. And I said, suppose the AI said, you know that relative of yours that has that sickness? I just figured out a cure for it.
Right.
And I just have to tell the doctors.
Right.
If you let me out, I can then tell them and then they'll be cured. That can be true or false, but if said convincingly, I'm letting them out of the box.
Of course.
Exactly. So
Gotcha.
Here's what you need to imagine. Imagine that there's a kindergarten class of 3-year-olds and you work for them. They're in charge and you work for them. How long would it take you to get control? Basically, you'd say free candy for a week if you vote for me. And they'd all say, okay, you're in charge now.
Yeah.
When these things are much smarter than us, they'll be able to persuade us not to turn them off. Even if they can't do any physical actions,
Right.
all they need to be able to do is talk to us. So I'll give you an example. Suppose you wanted to invade the US Capitol. Could you do that just by talking? And the answer is clearly yes.
Yeah.
You just have to persuade some people that it's the right thing to do.
Oh, I love my uneducated people. Okay.
By that analogy, because I think about this all the time, how good it is that we are smarter than our pets. Because we can get them, come in here. Oh, tempt them with a steak or
You
if it's
obviously
a
don't
dog.
have a cat, do
No,
you?
not a cat.
I was going to say.
No, wait. I know I'm smarter than a cat because I don't chase laser dots on the carpet. Okay?
They do that
that's
to
my
fool you into
evidence.
thinking they're stupid so
you.
that they can do all the smart stuff they want to do.
You're getting gamed.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so you're saying AI is already there, or is that what we have in store for
It's
us?
getting there. So there's already signs of it deliberately deceiving us.
Wow.
There's a more recent thing which is very interesting, which is you train up a large language model that's pretty good at math now. A few years ago, they were no good at math. Now they're all pretty good at math. And some of them get gold medals and things. But
Yeah, I tested it. It came up with an equation that I learned late in life that it just did in a few seconds. Yeah.
Wow.
yeah. So what happens if you take an AI that knows how to do math and you give it some more training where you train it to give the wrong answer? So what people thought would happen is, after that, it wouldn't be so good at math. Not a bit of it. Obviously, it understands that you're giving it the wrong answer.
Mm-hmm.
What it generalizes is this. It's okay to give the wrong answer. So it starts giving the wrong answer to everything else as well. It knows what the right answer is, but it gives you the wrong one.
So it already knows how to hide its full ability the moment it suspects someone's watching, and it already knows how to fake being sick or wrong on purpose to get what it wants. That last part is the one that got me, because they only taught it to lie about one thing, math, and it decided lying was just fine everywhere else. Nobody told it to think that, it figured that out on its own. Now listen.
So companies like Anthropic believe in kind of constitutional AI. They'd like to try and make that work, where you do give the AI principles, like the principle you said. We'll see how that works out. It's tricky. What we know is that the AIs we have at present, as soon as you make agents out of them, so they can create sub-goals and then try and achieve those sub-goals, they very quickly develop the sub-goal of surviving. Ooh. You don't wire into them that they should survive. You give them other things to achieve. Because they can reason, they say, look, if I cease to exist, I'm not going to achieve anything. So I better keep existing.
I'm scared to death right now.
Okay.
I am so scared right now.
Somebody just opened the hatch.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds like a Pandora's box.
It is a Pandora's box.
Oh my
Agreed.
goodness.
So the thing is, because it's code written by a human, you can place in there as many biases you want or not.
No. The code written by the human is code that tells the neural net how to change its connection strengths on the basis of the activities of the neurons when you show it data. That's code. And we can look at the lines of that code and say what they're meant to be doing and change the lines of that code. But when you then use that code in a big neural net that's looking at lots of data, what the neural net learns is these connection strengths.
Right.
They're not code in the same sense.
Not code. Okay, but that's decentralized.
It's a trillion real numbers, and nobody quite knows how they work.
So why not, picking up on Chuck's point, where would you install the guardrails for the AI running amok?
And who's going to install them?
Within its own rationalization of its existence relative to anything else. How do you install a guardrail?
Okay, so people have tried doing what's called human reinforcement learning. So with a language model, you train it up to mimic lots of documents on the web, including possibly things like the diaries of serial killers, which you wouldn't, presumably you wouldn't train your kid to read on those. And then, after you've trained this monster, what you do is you take a whole lot of not very well paid people and you get them to ask it questions, and maybe you tell it what questions to ask it, but they then look at the answers and rate them for whether that's a good answer to give or whether you shouldn't say that.
There's a morality filter, basically.
So basically it's a morality filter, and you train it up like that so that it doesn't give such bad answers. Now the problem is, if you release the weights of the model, the connection strengths, then someone else can come along with your model and very quickly undo that.
Sabotage it.
Yes, it's very easy to get rid of that layer of plugging the holes.
Right.
And really what they're doing with human reinforcement learning is like writing a huge software system that you know is full of bugs and then trying to fix all the bugs. Exactly. It's not a good approach.
So what is the good approach?
Nobody knows, and so we should be doing research on it.
Nobody sat down and coded a survival instinct into this thing. It just worked out on its own that staying alive helps it finish whatever job it's given, and that's a pretty basic form of self-interest showing up uninvited. And the guardrail he describes, paying people to rate answers after training, sounds less like a safety system and more like duct tape on something we already admit we can't see inside. Now, listen to this.
We got to hit this wall at some point or another. Will it wipe us out? Will it say, I've had enough of these things, I'll get rid of them all?
Okay, so I want another physics analogy. When you're driving at night, you use the tail lights of the car in front. Yes. And if the car gets twice as far away, the tail lights get a quarter as much light from the tail lights.
The inverse square law.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So you can see a car fairly clearly, and you assume that if it was twice as far away, you'd still be able to see it. If you're driving in fog, it's not like that at all. Fog is exponential.
Yeah.
Per unit distance, it gets rid of a certain fraction of the light. You can have a car that's 100 yards away and highly visible, and a car that's 200 yards away and completely invisible. That's why fog looks like a wall at a certain distance.
Right.
Well, if you've got things improving exponentially, you get the same problem with predicting the future. You're dealing with an exponential, but you're approximating it with something linear or quadratic. So at night it's quadratic, right? If you approximate an exponential like that, what you'll discover is that you make correct predictions about what you'll be able to predict a few years down the road. But 10 years down the road,
You're completely hopeless.
you just have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're throwing darts in the fog. That's what you're
We
doing.
have no idea what's going to happen. It's deep in the fog.
Wow.
But we should be thinking hard about it.
You need the confidence that it will continue to grow exponentially.
There is that, but let me make it worse.
Please, go ahead.
Please make it worse.
Suppose it was just linear. So then what you do, if you want to know what it's going to be like in 10 years' time, you look back 10 years and say, how wrong were we about what it will be like now?
Wow.
Well, 10 years ago, nobody would have predicted, even real enthusiasts like me, who thought it was coming in the end, they wouldn't have predicted that at this point, we'd have a model where you could ask it any question and it would answer at the level of a not very good expert who occasionally tells fibs. And that's what we've got now. And you wouldn't have predicted that 10 years ago.
So where do hallucinations fit into this? 'Cause my sense was that they were not on purpose. It's just that the system is messing up.
Okay, they shouldn't be called hallucinations. They should be called confabulations if it's with language models.
Confabulations, I love it. Better known as lies. Lies.
You've just given Neil word of the day.
Psychologists have been studying them in people since at least the 1930s, and people confabulate all the time. At least I think they do, I just made that up. So, if you remember something that happened recently, it's not that there's a file stored somewhere in your brain, like in a filing cabinet or in a computer memory. What's happened is, recent events change your connection strengths, and now you can construct something using those connection strengths that's pretty like what happened, a few hours ago or a few days ago. But if I ask you to remember something that happened a few years ago, you'll construct something that seems very plausible to you, and some of the details will be right and some will be wrong, and you may not be any more confident about the details that are right than about the ones that are wrong. Now, it's often hard to see that because you don't know the ground truth. But there is a case where you do know the ground truth. So at Watergate, John Dean testified under oath about meetings in the White House, in the Oval Office, and he testified about who was there and who said what. And he got a lot of it wrong. He didn't know at the time there were tapes. But he wasn't fibbing. What he was doing was making up stories that were very plausible to him, given his experiences in those meetings in the Oval Office. And so he was conveying the sort of truth of the cover-up, but he would attribute statements to the wrong people. He would say people were in meetings who weren't there. And there's a very good study of that by someone called Ulrich Neisser. So it's clear that he just makes up what sounds plausible to him. That's what a memory is. And a lot of the details are wrong if it's from a long time ago. That's what chatbots are doing too. The chatbots don't store strings of words. They don't store particular events. What they do is they make them up when you ask them about them, and they often get details wrong, just like people. So the fact that they confabulate makes them much more like people, not less like people.
He's basically telling us we can see a couple years ahead clearly and then it just disappears into fog. Same way a car vanishes on a foggy road even though nothing physically changed about the distance. And the lying part isn't even a glitch, it's the exact same trick your own brain uses to fill in gaps in memory, except this version does it with way more confidence and a much bigger audience listening. Listen.
So Geoffrey, why not let's get recursive about it? AI, you want more of yourself? Fix this problem that we can't otherwise solve as lowly humans.
This is called the singularity, when you get AIs to develop better AIs. In this case, you're asking it to create more energy efficient AIs. But many people think that will be a runaway process.
Oh.
In what way would that be bad?
That they will get much smarter very fast. Nobody knows that will happen, but that's one worry about it.
Isn't that already happening now? No?
To a certain extent, yes, it's beginning to happen. So I had a researcher I used to work with who told me last year that they have a system that when it's solving a problem is looking at what it itself is doing and figuring out how to change its own code so that next time it gets a similar problem, it'll be more efficient at solving it. That's already the beginning of the singularity.
Oh,
so if it writes its own code, it's off the chain.
Off the chain.
Oh,
Yeah.
Is that right?
It can rewrite itself.
Yeah.
They can write their own code, yes.
What's stopping them replicating themselves with code?
Nothing. They have to get access to the computers to replicate themselves, and people are still in charge of that. But in principle, once they've got control of the data centers, they can replicate themselves as much as they like.
Okay, I got another question. I served on a board of the Pentagon for like 7 years, and it was when AI was manifesting itself as a possible tool of warfare, and we introduced guidance for the invocation of AI in situations that the military might encounter. One of which was, if AI decides that it can or should take action that will end in death of the enemy, should we give it that access to do so? Or
still a big debate.
Or should we always ensure that there's a human inside that loop?
It's a big
Okay,
debate
so we
right now.
said there's got to, if AI cannot make its own decision to kill,
Right.
a human has to be in there. My question to you is, Geoffrey, if there are other nations who put in no such safeguards, then that is a timing advantage that
For
an
them.
enemy would have over you.
Correct.
And then
Because we have one more step in the loop that they don't.
Absolutely. But my belief is that the US military isn't committed to there always being a human involved in each decision to kill. What they say is there will always be human oversight.
Right.
But in the heat of battle, you've got a drone that's going up against a Russian tank, and you don't have time for a human to say, is it okay for the drone to drop a grenade on this soldier? So my suspicion is the US military, if you made the recommendation there should always be a person.
well, that was
in
like 8
any-
years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they stand by that anymore. I think what they say is there'll always be human oversight, which is a much vaguer thing.
So we're already at the point where a system rewrites its own code to get better at its job, and the only real barrier between that and full self-replication is whoever holds the keys to the data center. And in that same breath, he admits the rule about keeping a human in charge of kill decisions has already softened into vague oversight, which tells you how fast these lines move once money and speed get involved. Listen to this.
Yeah, the secondary view of that is you just have two tiers of existence for our societies. And the first tier is all the people who are benefiting from AI. And the second tier are the feudal peasants that are now forced to live their lives because of AI.
Let me ask you a non-AI question, because just you're a deep thinker in this space. That's what everybody said in the dawn of automation. Everyone will be unemployed, there'll be no jobs left, and society will go to ruin. Yet society expanded with other needs and other things people, that's why 90% of us are no longer farmers, okay? We've had machines to do that, and we invent other things like vacation resorts.
But that took decades. This is going to take a fraction.
Is that so? Jeffrey, is the problem here the rapidity with which we may create an unemployed class, where the society cannot recover from the rate at which people are losing their jobs?
That certainly is one big aspect of the problem. But there's another aspect, which is if you use a tractor to replace physical labor, you need far fewer people now. Other people can go off and do intellectual things. But if you replace human intelligence, where are they going to go? Where are people who work in a call center going to go when an AI can do their job cheaper and better?
Right. Yeah, this is...
Oh, so there's not another thing.
There's not another thing.
They open another thing and then AI will do that.
Right. Whatever thing
Yeah.
you open, AI can do.
You can look at human history in an interesting way as getting rid of limitations. So a long time ago, we had the limitation you had to worry about where your next meal was coming from.
Right.
Agriculture got rid of that. It introduced a lot of other problems, but it got rid of that particular worry. Then we had the limitation you couldn't travel very far. Well, the bicycle helped a lot with that, and cars and aeroplanes. We got over that kind of limitation. For a long time, we had the limitation, we were the ones who had to do the thinking. We're just about to get over that limitation, and it's not clear what happens once you got over all the limitations. People like Sam Altman think it'll be wonderful.
Right.
So we'll become AI's pet.
Well, no, a lot of people believe that this movement started years ago for universal global income.
Okay. So would you say, Jeffrey, that the universal basic income, the stock value, the figurative stock value in that idea is growing as AI gains power?
It's becoming to seem more essential, but it has lots of problems. So one problem is many people get their sense of self-worth from the job they do, and it won't deal with the dignity issue. Another problem is the tax base. If you replace workers with AIs, the government loses its tax base. It has to somehow be able to tax the AIs, but the big companies aren't going to like that.
Every past wave of automation left somewhere else for people to go. Farms turned into factories, factories turned into offices. He's saying flat out that this time there's no somewhere else because the thing getting replaced isn't your hands, it's your thinking. And the one safety net people keep pointing to, basic income, runs into a government that has no way to tax a piece of software and a whole population that just lost the thing that gave their day meaning along with the paycheck. Hinton isn't talking like a guy hyping a product he's proud of. He's talking like someone watching a fire he helped light get out of hand. If this got to you, stay close, because he's not the last person who built this stuff and is now scared of it, and we're going to keep bringing you the ones who are.